What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of the Scottcast. If this is your first time joining us, thank you very much for actually watching. But this is the my new YouTube channel. So just a little bit of background here. I had a podcast, short-lived, one episode. 2 episodes of you include the one that was recorded but never published of me ranting about U.S. soccer, a topic that you'll see a lot on here. I figured I kind of want to go more short form content, not TikToks or shorts or anything like that. But I'm thinking more just short term YouTube videos is going to be the new format here. As you can see, my beautiful face is now shown. I want to go because I want to go pretty wide with what I do and what I record. So I'm just gonna throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks. You'll see a lot of content. You'll see stuff like this just dives into interesting things I find on the internet. Sports, politics. Hopefully not too much politics. Sports. Esports again. Culture, jobs. I'm a recruiter by trade, so things like that I find interesting. Again, I'll keep the preachiness down a level. My goal is to talk about things that I'm passionate about, that I find entertaining. If I ever do dive into topics that might be considered edgy or concerning or anything like that, I promise to do so in a way that is still lighthearted, still having fun at the end of the day. Of course, there's times to get serious, but at the same time, I try to keep the overall seriousness, at a 75% at the absolute most, even if we're talking about the most serious and detrimental topics possible. Again, probably don't plan on covering too much of that, but these day and age, you never know where the Scottcast might go. So without further ado, what I want to jump into today is a Twitter thread I saw by Brian Bader of Hockey Prospecting. Again, if you know me at all, you'll know that I'm a huge hockey fan, so this stuck out to me. This is kind of the prospect draft rankings for last year, and I want to compare them to where things are now, and kind of where we're at with the prospect rankings as of 2025. So I have seemed to have completely lost that, so I'm going to have to go and chase it up for us. Here we go. But yeah, so I want to compare the rankings from 2025 to the rankings that we have now after the draft. So these are the two things that we'll look at. I want to look at the big shifts, the big changes. Just full transparency to everyone, I am a Flyers fan. I know it's a shocking thing to believe, being based out of Philadelphia. Diehard Flyers fan, season ticket holder. I got my jerseys in the closet here. Maybe you'll see me wear them in a couple videos down the line. So, what we'll probably dive a little bit more into my comfort zone, which is the Flyers and things like that. But I do want to explore. He does do a really, really good job of providing context here, and you can see in the thread. So we'll go over it and we'll go high level. Again, I'm not a hockey expert when it comes to the whole league. I do follow the draft really closely. I do follow the prospect scenes. A couple of my hockey friends absolutely hate it because they're like, dude, how could you be wasting your time in June talking about kids that are going to take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to even become pro? But I do love it. It's especially for a rebuilding team like the Flyers, who are seems like they're always in rebuild mode. It's fun to follow this stuff because it's how your team gets better at the end of the day. So before we jump into the actual rankings, I want to go over what Brian says is his methodology, because I think this is important to give us a baseline understanding of kind of what is the goal, how are these prospects ranked, because we're going off his rankings. Again, these are not my rankings. My rankings would be a lot worse than this, but to consider a prospect, forward to D, played less than 100 NHL games, drafted or first eligible draft year for free agents from 2019 to 2025. Goalies played less than 50 NHL games. Obviously, if a goalie's playing more than 50 games a single year, that's a full year. Or draft eligible, was a free agent from 2018 to 2025. Top 5 skaters are defined as who would consider the top, or as who would most would consider the top 5 prospects. In some cases, local experts, team personnel, journalists, independent scouts, etc., providing insight on the top 5. So This is all pretty This is all pretty standard here. We're probably really only going to get into top five NHLers, things like that. Maybe a little bit of depth stars. Again, this is looking at each team's, each organization's draft system. So it's not necessarily when they say someone's a depth star, it's not necessarily saying that this person could be a star on any prospect pool. It's like, hey, this is someone in this prospect pool that stands out compared to the other people in that pool. So without further ado, let's just get to the general rankings, because I think this is where you'll see, and again, I want to compare the differences because obviously we have graduates and things like that, so things shift for many different reasons. But here is 2025 as of July 2025, and no surprise to anyone, we see the San Jose Sharks at the top. I think they had a really good draft. I think they did a really good job. Obviously Celebrini is unbelievable. We're already seeing flashes from Celebrini of being a really good NHL hockey player, which I think everyone kind of saw coming. But they ended up getting Misa as well in this draft. So I think that is a solidified center core. I mean, you have your 1C and you have your 2C, whichever way you see it. Obviously, I think Celebrini kind of has that more 1C upside, but I mean, still, having Misa being your other kind of fallback option at 1C is, from a development standpoint, is pretty nice position to be in. So they also have Will Smith, Dickerson as well, who again I rate really highly, especially Dickerson. That was someone I wanted the Flyers to take. I think he's going to be a really, really good player in the NHL. So it doesn't surprise me where this pool is. Now, if we look at where the Sharks were in May of 2024, and again, I think I want to go and just double check this, because I do believe that the 2024 list was before the draft. So I'm just checking here so I have my numbers right. Yeah, so this is what the prospect pool looked like. So this was before the draft, before they got Celebrini and before they got a couple of other pieces to the puzzle. But you can see here, you're looking at this prospect pool and you're like, oh my God, for a team as bad as the Sharks, that's a really bad prospect pool. Will Smith being your top guy, that's not going to get you very far. And what they did, and they turned around, and they turned that into, I mean, you turn that into Celebrini and Misa and Dickerson. Now we got a prospect pool. This is turned into one of the deepest prospect pools from a forward center standpoint, just with Celebrini, Misa, and Smith as well. It's really strong. I really like it. I think there's a lot of potential here. Now, it is the San Jose Sharks. I'm not confident that they're going to be on the same timeline as some of the other teams we'll see here. I do believe that it is, again, boom or bust with them when it comes to this rebuild that they're in and they continue to be on. So we'll see how that goes. But I think they've done a good job. I think they deserve their jump up. If you see here, they were at 8 last year. Now they're at 1. I mean, that makes perfect sense. So I get that there's nothing really of concern there. So now we'll jump to, which I think is the most interesting prospect pool out of all of these, is the Montreal Canadiens. I think we'll only do the top 5 for this video. I think if I do it, I've just realized how much I've been ranting for, and I think if I go any further than top 5, this will be like an hour-long video, and I'll get 0 views on an hour-long video, and that might not be the best for my mental sanity. But anyways, Montreal Canadiens, they have, and this, I'm very comfortable saying this, they have one of the most entertaining prospect pools ever. I think Hudson is unbelievable. I think he obviously completely deserved winning the Rookie of the Year this year. Again, you could get into the argument about primary assist, secondary assist. If you want to go, linear, a lot of people on Flyers Twitter did do that because they were making the case for Michikov over Hudson. But Hudson played the best. He was the most entertaining out of all of them. He plays a more flashy position in that D position where he can, that offensive D position is always going to be more at flashy to people than your really good wing plays. So, and then they have Demidov, who is, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but he is going to be a beast. I love this guy. You'll hear me say this a lot. I wish the Flyers took him. He is going to be so good in this league, and I think he is going to be a absolute stud. The couple of games we saw him play, he just looked so good. I'm stunned by how good he looks. So those Russian prospects, man, they're built differently, and they're absolutely incredible. So I think Montreal has done a really, really good job as well. And look at the way, I mean, they were ranked 2 to begin with, and now they're still at 2, but they didn't, obviously, I don't think they even graduated anyone. So let's just take a look real quick. See if they didn't graduate anyone. All they did was add Demidov into this insane pool. And I do like here, I'm just going to poke fun a little bit at my friends here that are Montreal Canadian fans. Imagine if you had Michikov in this pool instead of Reinbacher. Oh my God, this pool would be, it'd be number 1 by a huge margin. So Brini and Misa would have nothing on Lane Hudson, Michikov, and Demidov. So I feel for my Canadians fans, but they got what they needed. They got exactly some people, and again, I'm a huge Michikov fan. I'll die on the hill that I think he's the best rookie last year. But some are saying that Demidov's going to be better than Michikov. And again, they're both incredibly skilled people, but Demidov a little bit bigger, a little bit better at puck possession. So, it could go either way. So I think they're loving where they're at right now. Again, they didn't graduate anyone. And look at this team, this prospect pool. I think the huge question mark is on Reinbacher. I haven't been following much of him, so I'm not going to make like a definitive take on him, but I think you would want more from him for where you drafted him in that draft. You're expecting to take a top line guy, top pair guy with that pick. Will he turn into that? He certainly has the size for it, and of course you have Lane Hudson. Now Lane Hudson isn't the most defensively sturdy defenseman on the team. You're going to need some of that size, some of that grit, some of that beat the crap out of you attitude when you're working with Hudson, who's so unbelievably gifted on the offensive end. So I think he's a good balancing piece. I think he's a great prospect. I don't know. I think Canadians fans would agree after they stop yelling at me for the Michikov comment that they would hope for a little bit more out of Reinbacher, but time will obviously tell. So going on here to number 3. This is where we'll get off the rails a little bit, because now you're going to hear me rant about the Flyers. You're going to see how much I really love the Flyers. So, full transparency, been a Flyers fan my entire life. Been going to games. My dad's company had season tickets for my entire life. We had them for 28 years. The second my dad retired, we went ahead, me and him bought our own season tickets. We've been a season ticket holder since. I love this team. I go to about 15 games a year. They're my number 1. I love this team. So here's some bias, full transparency, but I love the Flyers draft. They made some huge additions to their prospect pool, and I think we're going to see it sooner rather than later. What pays off on that? Excuse me, I just got to grab a poop bag from my dog's mouth as he just brought it up to me. It's okay, buddy. So what you're seeing here is a prospect pool that is maturing, and I think this is one of the prospect pools where you look at it and they're closer. They're a lot closer than the San Jose's prospect pool. Maybe not as close as the Canadiens pool. I mean, I think Michikov's more ready than Demidov is, but Hudson obviously is a producer in the NHL already. He's already at that point. So I think they're a little bit closer than us, but if you look at the other people around us, again, way closer than the Blackhawks, way closer than the Ducks. I think this is a prospect pool that this is more of on a 2 to 3 year timeline than some of the other pools where you see like 3 to 4, maybe even 5 for some of these pools. So start off with Michikov. I mean, dear God, he was everything you imagined and more. His first season last year, came straight over from Russia, came in like June, didn't have a full off season of working out, clearly looked gassed at points. He didn't look like he was in NHL shape, but the kid was 19, so you don't expect him to go and light the world on fire from a health regimen stamina standpoint. So I'm really excited to see what he looks like next year after a full off season of just working out, being on an NHL weight program, building up that muscle, and he's already so skilled. He is unbelievable, and what I'm so excited about is to see him paired with Porter Martone, the Flyers pick at number 6 this year. I cannot believe this kid slid to 6. And of course I get it, he doesn't play the premium position. It was center, center, center. Obviously D, center, center, center. But oh my lord, this kid can play. I think he's got a sneaky chance. He did not have a good rookie camp, but I think he's got a sneaky good chance to be, to make this roster. It depends what he does with it. If he doesn't make the roster, I know he needs to make a decision by August on whether he's going to go to college or not. I think the best place for him would be in college, maybe at a Penn State, playing with Gavin McKenna. That'd be really sick. I'm down the road from Penn State. I would 100% go see some games if I get to see those two play on a line together. That'd be unbelievable. But, I think what would be best for him would be not to make the team. But with the Tyson Forrester injury, I do believe Porter Martone could make this team. And I think he's ready. He's got the body for it. He's not one of these undersized young kids where you're like, oh, this kid's going to get bullied around. I think he's got the NHL body, maybe not the strength, but he's got the NHL ready body that he can grow into, and I think he'd be ready. I don't think he would get bullied around too much in the NHL level, and he's got an unbelievable playmaking and shot ability. I think putting him on a line together with Michikov, maybe centered by like a Sean Couturier, or, I mean, there's not a lot of options, but can you imagine Trevor Zegras as well? Now, you would be defensive liability if you did a Trevor Zegras, Michikov, Martone line, but at the same time, think about the offensive output. That would be an unbelievable line. And I think as a biased Flyers fan who knows we're not going to do much this year, I would want to see that just for entertainment values. So then going down the list, we have Luchenko. He is, I would say, the most controversial, and maybe Nesbitt as well. These two are the most controversial in the prospect pool, but Luchenko the most. If you looked at what was available around the Luchenko pick, and we'll get to this once I go through some of the other teams and some of the other prospect pools, maybe in a different video. If you like this video and if you want more of this, please just let me know. Again, comments are incredible, even if it's criticism, even if it's like, hey, the mic volumes are low, mic volumes are high, telling me to do this, not that, whatever it might be. Any preferences that you have would be super helpful. Just starting to get off the ground on this, so I'm 100% open to feedback. So jumping back into it, though, as we talk about controversial, Luchenko, if we looked at the people, Zeev Buium is the huge one. I saw there was a prospect ranking, and I want to go through that at some point in a video, but there was a prospect ranking done by one of the top people. I believe it was at The Athletic, and it had Zeev Buium in like the top 15 or something crazy. And they had Jet Luchenko at 52 or 48. It was 52 or 48. They went back and forth with these two. I forget. I think Luchenko is maybe 48. Anyways, they had a lot of options there, and they had Hellenius as well, who they could have taken. So there's people who have been producing more than Luchenko has. Now, Luchenko did make the NHL for a couple games last year, and he did look okay. I think he's the exact type of player that John Tortorella really liked. He plays that two-way game. He's really responsible in defense. Good, not great at faceoffs. He's getting better. I think he's going to be a good middle six center. I had to let the dog out. That's Gus, by the way. You'll see him in a ton of videos. He's the man. I had to let him out, so the door's going to be open now. So if you see chaos behind me, just let me know. I don't have vision back there. But yeah, so Luchenko is a controversial pick. There were definitely better, more NHL ready prospects there. He was the youngest player in the draft. I mean, he's only a couple months older than some of the people that we took in the last draft, let alone his draft 2 years ago. So he was a project. Everyone knew it. He did not take a step up this year, though, in the OHL, and then he finished this year in the AHL, and didn't look like it didn't take a step forward like you would want that prospect to take in their D+1 year. So it's somewhat concerning, his trajectory right now, but I'm still have high hopes. His type of player, even though he's smaller, his type of player does have a spot in the NHL. He plays a very, I don't want to put this type of title on him, but He plays a Scott Walton-esque. Again, people are going to rip me up for that comparison. I have been ripped up on Twitter for that. I'm not saying one-for-one skill set-wise. I'm just saying the usefulness on the team. He can play good defense. He can be on the penalty kill. He can do face-offs for you. He just feels like a player who will solidify himself in a middle six, if not absolute worst, the bottom half of a lineup for an NHL team. Now, whether that's good enough for a pick that high, people can argue that for days. Last person I want to talk about is Nesbitt. This was, in Flyers fashion, another controversial pick here. A center, huge guy, pretty much the polar opposite to Luchenko. It's almost, I made this point when they drafted him as well, it's almost like they were kind of flipping the script and taking the exact opposite from like they wanted a complete opposite project to the Luchenko project. And that's where we get Jack Nesbitt. And again, this is one where in the moment, I'd be honest with you, I did not know who he was. I saw some of the podcasts, some of the Flyers related podcasts had, some insight on him, and they were saying, hey, maybe we could get him at the 22 or 31 mark, more towards the 22, and they've talked about him there. We ended up trading 2 first-round picks. We traded 22 and 31 to get up to 13 to take him. Some people say, and even Barry Trotz himself came out and said that he tried trading for Nesbitt, so that gives me a little bit of confidence. But at the same time, feels like an overpay for a need. But this is a huge need. We needed a big middle down the line guy, and I think this is where Jack Nesbitt comes into play. Atrocious skating, but the Flyers have been really confident in their ability to develop skating. They, talk about the Tyson Forrester project. There's a lot of different scenarios as well that they've gone through, but they're confident in their ability to develop skating. I think when you look at the list of things that scare the Flyers from a prospect skill set standpoint, skating is at the absolute bottom, at least based on their draft history. So if Nesbitt can get the skating even at like a slightly below NHL average level, I think he has a really good chance to be a top, I would say maybe a 2C. I don't see 1C in him. But again, 1C, 2C is so arbitrary. 1C on a cup contender looks a lot different than 1C at a playoff team. Are we talking 1C as Connor McDavid, or are we saying 1C as in, a million different things? So 1C, 2C means a lot differently, but I think he can be a 2C on a good playoff team if he develops that skating. He's got playmaking ability. He can get gritty in front of the net. He can get those rebounds, and he can also still play with a little bit of vision, do some passing, things like that. So I like him. I grown more fond of him as the pick got older, because in the moment, if you please don't dig up my Twitter, I said probably some ridiculous things. But again, you got Porter Martone. Everything on top of that was gravy. And gravy did they add? They had a really, really good second round. Some people, definitely, they got Versagi, they got a couple of other people where you're like, holy hell, that was a really good prospect. Really good takeaway from the second round. So overall, I think the Flyers have earned their jump here. As you can see, they were at the 5th spot, and then they jumped to the 3rd spot. So one also interesting area for goalie rankings. This time last year, they were number 1 for goalie rankings. They actually dropped to 3. Part of that, I believe, is Kolosov. It technically might have graduated. I don't know if he's still considered in the prospect pool, but the digression, or I guess stagnation, of the Flyers goaltending that transpired over the past year from May 2024 to July 2025 is definitely real, and that's why you see one of the traditionally, again, this has not even just been a 2024 thing. If we find these rankings from 2023, I'm sure that they were up there as well. So yeah, dropping from the number 1 goalie prospect pool to the number 3. Again, like I said, I think this is where you see kind of the stagnation or digression, even in digression's a word, whatever, regression. There you go. Once did not go to school for words, that's for sure. But yeah, so you see the goalie rankings dropped and I think for good reason. I think Bjarnason isn't as much of a I don't want to call it blue chip prospect because again it's an arbitrary ranking on him, but I thought Bjarnason had a chance to be a, an AHL goalie, maybe a split starter, definitely not like a 1G or anything like that, but I thought he had potential. What we're seeing out of him isn't anything crazy. I'm excited to see him in the AHL this year and just see if he develops there. But I think Zavragin is the guy really holding this pool up. Zavragin looks like a stud. He had another really good year. I am so excited for this guy to get here. So let's just jump into the Kraken. So, to be fully honest with you, I know very little about the Kraken's prospect pool. I know Barclay Canton. I do like him a lot, and I do think the O'Brien pick was an interesting one, but one I understood. This doesn't scream top-end talent to me. It needs work. They have to, and as you can see here, even Brian mentions it, like the Kraken need to build this pool out, and it could be a top 3 pool. He's right, especially with other people graduating, other people above them like the Flyers and the Canadians, who are almost certainly going to be graduating their top prospects this year. So I think this is definitely a prospect pool that's on the rise. I like O'Brien. I thought he was good. I was praying that the Flyers didn't take him just because Porter Martone and Hagens were there, but still a person if we walked away with I wasn't going to be upset about. So I think the last one we'll talk about today is the Chicago Blackhawks. So the Frondell pick was super interesting because I don't think there was a point like halfway through the draft process, not the draft itself, but like the pre-draft, interviewings, combines, things like that. The first half of that was starting, as the season was ending, and then right after it ended, where it didn't seem likely that Frondell was going to go to the Blackhawks or go that high during the draft. And then the second half came, and it was like Frondell is a lock to go to the Blackhawks. Very interesting. I was one of the people, not rare people, but I was probably one of the higher people in the Flyers Twitterverse that was super high on Frondell. He was like my number one guy, obviously besides the 2 number ones in Schaefer and Misa, but he was definitely like my number one realistic guy that I thought the Flyers would, should take a shot at. I loved his game. I thought his shot was unbelievable. I think he'll be a really, really good, pairing with Bedard. And if you look at the ranking changes, and we didn't do this for the Kraken, so I will just take a look at this as well for the Kraken. Kraken last year were at 13. They jump up to 4. So I do think they're making really, really good headway here. I think the Kraken made some good offseason moves as well from a actual solidified NHL player standpoint. I'll avoid that for now, but the Kraken are definitely on the rise. So then we take a look at where the Blackhawks were. They were at 3 last year, and now they're at 5. Simple reason why. Bedard graduated. He played a full year in the NHL. Bedard was one of the best prospects, in this pool or in these rankings at all. So, with Bedard graduating, Frondell obviously is the number one person in their pool. Frondell is a extremely talented player. I do think he can be a really, really good player for this team. As for the Blackhawks in general, I don't think this gets it done. I think it's even 4 years' time, even if Bedard turns into, even the 80% of what McDavid is, I just don't see this team being very competitive unless there's a huge shift here. They hit like on their next 3 drafts and they're unbelievable, but I don't know. This even with this prospect pool, who I like, it does not strike me as something I'm very, very excited about. I'm also excited about Spencer Knight, by the way. I thought that was a great pickup. I think there's potential for him to get even better. Again, I'll stay away from some of the NHL talk, established NHL talk, but I think that was a good risky move that definitely pay off. So I think that's where we'll cut it for now. I think we're at like the 25-minute mark here, so I kind of want to keep things a little bit tight. I don't want to be starting to drop hour-long videos for the first couple of weeks and months of the channel here. But yeah, if you like what you saw here, I'd really appreciate if you give a like, comment, subscribe, anything to support the channel would be super appreciated. Like I said, feedback's super important. I'm new to this. I'm new to content creation. I really, am passionate about what I talk about, but I know other people might not be. So, if there's things that you like, things you don't like, and just stuff that you don't want to hear, or, even mannerisms, the way I speak, the way I present information, if you want me to, have more visual stuff, have less visual stuff, whatever it might be, again, really much appreciated. So thank you so much, guys. I will check you in the next one, and talk to you soon.